How are we doing, everyone? It is time for Thursday night football. We got an exciting one tonight between the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. I'm excited for this one. There's also some weather to be aware of. I'm going to actually pull up the latest weather report right now. But there is going to be rain in this game today. There will be rain in the game today. Very much worth noting. The wind is not going to be as bad as I expected it was going to be yesterday, but there is still a wind factor in this game as well. But it will be raining the entire game tonight. There are some possible thunderstorms as well that could be leading to some delays in this game. It's going to be an ugly one, guys. I appreciate you tuning in for the Thursday Night Live. I'll be live for the next hour or so, breaking down my thoughts on what to expect in this game, the must-start plays for fantasy, the must-bench plays. I think there's going to be a little bit more of those in this Thursday night game. Hope we're all doing well. There's going to be a lot of Kyle Pitts questions tonight, and rightfully so. I would be playing Dalton Schultz over Kyle Pitts personally this week, especially with the rain in this game. But I do think Kyle Pitts is probably a guy you're starting in most spots still this week. Like I'm still starting Kyle Pitts over Greg Dulcich. You can't convince me otherwise. Yeah, I get that the rain is still going to be a little bit scary, but I do think he's still a better option than Dulcich. As good as Dulcich has been, Dulcich gone over 10 points in his 3 only games in the NFL, but I still have a little bit more faith in Kyle Pitts. Should we bench the kickers? Yeah, Jonathan, you should bench the kickers in all spots possible. The defenses are a little interesting, but it's not like the Falcons or Panthers. Defense is very good, so I don't have very much faith in either of the defenses either. London or Brandon Cooks, that one's really close. I feel like it's got to be Brandon Cooks, but I do think that Drake London he's in sleeper status at this point. I think he's a pretty big sleeper in the fantasy football world at this point. We might not see it tonight. He did see 7 targets last week, a few end zone targets as well. Just really couldn't connect with Marcus Mariota on very many of them. Only 3 catches, 23 yards. He's now been under 10 points in every single game since week 3. There's just no way he stays that bad for the rest of the fantasy season. He also has one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules that's out there, but I don't know if it's going to be tonight for Drake London. I love the video. Should I start CD or Amon-Ra? Also, would you start D Cook or Fournette? I would definitely go Dalvin. CD versus Amon-Ra super close. I actually think Amon-Ra is probably ahead of him in my rankings, but it's for sure close. We will try to stick to the Thursday night start sit questions, though. We got a question here from Sydney in the YouTube live. Patterson or Fournette? And yeah, so I do think Cordarrelle Patterson in most situations is a must-start player this week. Cordarrelle he came off injury last week. He played about 30% of the snaps last week, but he still saw the bulk of the touches in the backfield. He's still their primary running back. I think they also knew they had a game coming up this Thursday night on a short week, and that's part of the reason they didn't play him more. And I think we could see him play more in this game. I have him projected as the 17th running back this week, but that is behind Leonard Fournette. I would play Leonard Fournette over Cordarrelle Patterson still. It's a tough one, though. I got to admit, Fournette is definitely trending down. And, I mean, if we watched last week, Joe Mixon had 5 touchdowns against the Panthers last week. I don't think Cordarrelle Patterson can come anywhere close to that. But Cordarrelle Patterson could easily go over 100 yards and score a TD tonight. I do like Cordarrelle Patterson's prop tonight, too. I actually think it's moved a little bit since I first liked it at 49.5. I still like it at 55.5 tonight, though, against the Panthers. Panthers' run defense has been really bad. Good evening, Sam. Palmer or London, Keenan and Mike Will are out. Oh, God, yeah, I still feel like you got to go Josh Palmer over Drake London. And again, I feel like I'm actually higher on Drake London than most people out there rest of season. But in this game, with rain in this game, it's tough to see this being potentially the Drake London week. This is a good matchup for Drake London, though. Don't get me wrong here. The Panthers secondary has not been good. We'll walk through it in just a minute, some of the running backs they played up against. But just, again, Weatherman Sam putting my Weatherman hat on a little bit tonight. The rain is going to impact this game. This is already 2 pretty ugly offenses that have 2 quarterbacks that aren't the best throwers of the ball. PJ Walker versus Marcus Mariota tonight. And then we, on top of that, are in the rain with up to 15-mile-an-hour wind gusts. I don't really get concerned about the wind up till 25 miles an hour, but when there's rain on top of it, I do think it's something to at least consider. So I'm a little nervous for Drake London tonight. I'm definitely nervous for the kickers tonight. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I do think Cordarrelle Patterson's a must-start. I do think DJ Moore is still a must-start against this Falcons secondary. And I still think in most situations, again, it depends what you have out there. I'll actually read through the tight ends. I would start over Kyle Pitts, but I still think Kyle Pitts, like, he really does have to be considered in most spots. Here are the tight ends I'm starting over Kyle Pitts this week. I'm starting Travis Kelce over Kyle Pitts, starting Dallas Goedert, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Tyler Higbee, and David Njoku over Kyle Pitts. And Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts as well. I will say, though, with this Matt Stafford injury influx, I mean, Tyler Higbee's looking super sketch. He scored 0 points last week. Matt Stafford might miss this week now. I'm not sure I would start Tyler Higbee over Kyle Pitts personally. I'm not starting Craig Dulcich over Kyle Pitts. I'm not starting Pat Freiermuth over Kyle Pitts. I'm not starting Gerald Everett over Kyle Pitts. I'm not starting Robert Tonyan over Kyle Pitts. I might start Dalton Schultz over Kyle Pitts. I think that one is kind of close. We don't have it very close in the Walter rankings, though. Kyle Pitts has the edge there. So, yeah, I still think Kyle Pitts can be started in a lot of spots tonight. Some guys I think you absolutely need to be benching. Like, get these guys out of the start state questions in the comments. We can't start Olamide Zaccheaus. I hope no one's down that bad. Or Jameer Byrd, even though Jameer Bird's had a couple big games. Caleb Huntley, it can't be started. He's number 3 in this 3 running back rotation. Laviska Shenault might touch the ball only once. Chuba Hubbard's coming off an injury. He's going to be the second back in the Carolina Panthers backfield. Do not think you can start him with his floor. PJ Walker is not someone you can trust in the rain, and then pretty much everyone else. I think Mariota is a fringe start. He could run a lot tonight, but still not really loving Marcus Mariota, again, in this rainy game. It is a good matchup for Mariota, though. The Panthers defense has not been good this season. Is Keenan Allen playing, or should I play it safe and put in Terrace Marshall? Play it safe and put in Terrace Marshall. We cannot have faith that Keenan Allen's going to play this week. We've seen this play out so many times this season. And he keeps saying, he's publicly saying, Keenan Allen's not going to play till he's 100%. So do you think you got to be a little bit cautious with trusting Keenan Allen being playing? What's up, Sam? Question for my flex. Terrace Marshall, Jeff Wilson, Foreman, or Drake London. Love the app and appreciate the help. Thanks, Ryan. And shout out to the WalterPicks app, guys. If you haven't checked it out, it's completely free to download and install on the iOS and Android app stores. I've spent the last 3 years of my life personally helped building it, and it's every decision you have to make in fantasy. And of course, I'm going to try to help you on these lives as well. And yeah, I think Terrace Marshall is definitely in play here between these guys. I'd probably play Jeff Wilson over Terrace Marshall because of the rain. It does give me a little bit more concern about Terrace, but this is a good matchup for Terrace Marshall too. Again, this is why I think DJ Moore's a must start still in the rain, but Terrace Marshall's been in basically every down player for the Panthers. He has 11 targets over the last 2 weeks, and the Falcons have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to receivers. I mean, this is a smash spot for this passing attack, but then the rain really does put a damper on that, in my opinion. So I am a little bit more cautious about Terrace Marshall tonight. I do think Jeff Wilson showed out pretty well in his very first game, and I'm also optimistic Jeff Wilson will play maybe even a little more than he did in his very first game for the Dolphins. Foreman or Drake London, that's an interesting one too. I would side with Foreman, I think, just again because of the weather in this game. But again, this is a good matchup for Drake London. I am actually forced to start Drake London in one league. His floor is just so incredibly low that it is tough to trust Drake London at this point. He has gone under 10 points, again, every single week since week 3 in PPR leagues even. So, I mean, it's pretty brutal out there in the Drake London streets right now. I still think, like, because of that, he's probably one of the most left on receivers in all of fantasy football. He does have one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules. I'm actually pretty bullish on Drake London overall. And if he has another bad week tonight, I might be buying him in basically every league because he's basically free to acquire right now. He's not a starter on most people's fantasy teams. Jaylen Warren, seeing some Jaylen Warren questions. I would probably play Deontay Foreman over Jaylen Warren. Terrace Marshall or Kareem Hunt. That one's pretty interesting too. I'd probably go Kareem Hunt. I do think Younghoe Koo is risky tonight, by the way. I'm starting him in one of my leagues because I got to stick with my guy. You know, I'm not going to play the carousel at kicker. I don't have the mental capacity to be switching out my kicker every week. I'm not going to lie. I hate kickers in fantasy. I don't have the mental capacity for it. I'm already analyzing way too many things at the other positions. So I went with Younghoe Koo in my draft. I'm sticking with my guy even through the rain. But if you are someone that does play the carousel kicker, yeah, you should find another kicker tonight. It is going to be raining tonight. It's probably going to be a low-scoring game. So I don't love Younghoe Koo or the Panthers kicker tonight. Should I start Pitts in London or no because the weather please help? No. So in general, no. Like, you don't want to be starting London. You can definitely start Pitts. You don't want to start London, but he is a fringe start. Like, he still has a ceiling against the Panther secondary. Again, the Panther secondary has been pretty bad against wide receivers this season. They've allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to receivers, but they've actually been even worse than that in terms of yards allowed to receivers this season. I think they're bottom 5 in that metric. We haven't really seen them stop a passing attack this season. Obviously, we saw them get run over by Joe Mixon last week too. That's why I'm pretty bullish on Cordarrelle Patterson in this game. Honestly, he's probably the guy I'm most confident about in this game. It's Cordarrelle Patterson. It's a rainy game. The Panthers' run defense looked, horrible last week. They allowed the 8th best fantasy points performance ever last week against Joe Mixon, who had been incredibly inefficient up to that point last week. So I do think Cordarrelle Patterson's a really, really safe play What's up, Sam? Hope you had a great week. Unfortunately, you didn't get to my comment on the Sunday live, but I'll be back again. Thanks, Kyle. Do you like the over on Patterson, Foreman, 40 rushing yards? Have a great Thursday. Yeah, I like both those. I do. I like Patterson more than Foreman because Chuba Hubbard's back tonight, and I think Patterson's going to play more than he played last Sunday, which was about a third of the snaps. But I still like both of these guys, especially in the rain game. I would focus on the rushing props probably tonight. Juju or Pittman, not a Thursday night question, but I do think I would probably go Juju at this point. Pretty close though. Someone asking why Pitts. It's really just because of the other tight end options out there. It's a bleak world out there, guys, in the tight end streets. I mean, you got Travis Kelce, you got maybe Dallas Goedert or George Kittle or TJ Hawkinson, and if you don't have those guys, I mean, you are scrapping for scraps. I mean, you're really just scraping the bottom of the barrel at the tight end position all season. It's been so brutal that, yeah, I think Kyle Pitts is a start in most spots. I would start Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts. I would start TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce over Kyle Pitts. I'd strongly consider starting Dalton Schultz over Kyle Pitts. I don't think I'd start Pat Fryer-Muth over Kyle Pitts because he's got a pretty tough matchup this week, but Muth is definitely in play. But yeah, there's not that many tight ends. I wouldn't start Dulcich over Pitts. I still think Dulcich has a lot of risk. Rookie tight ends tend to struggle. He's been over 10 points though in each of his last 3 games. He's only 3 games, by the way, that he's played in the NFL. Super impressive stuff from Dulcich so far. Evan Ingram's dealing with an injury. Can't consider him. Robert Tonyan, I got no faith there. Gerald Everett, I mean, I want nothing to do with Gerald Everett. I think he is a walking landmine in fantasy. Foster Moreau, I guess, with Darren Waller out. But yeah, I'm starting Kyle Pitts just over all those guys. So that's why I have him as a start. I think you're starting Kyle Pitts in most spots, but it definitely is a case-by-case thing. DK or Foreman this week? Got to go DK Metcalf over Foreman. For sure, bench Foreman in that spot. Foreman is risky tonight. I don't have him as a must start. I do have him as a fringe start tonight. I think he is a fringe start. I think he's going to lead the backfield for the Panthers. But with Chuba Hubbard returning, there's some more risk there than usual. So I do think there's a good case for benching Deontay Foreman if you do have a good option. By the way, guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, smash the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button, smash the like button on TikTok as well. Seriously, guys, helps me out way more than you realize. I really, really do appreciate that. And again, the best way you can support me, check out the WalterPicks app in the iOS and Android App Store. It is going to help you with all your fantasy decisions, just like I'm going to try to help you on this live. Thank you for the gifts in the TikTok live. Foreman or Ayuk. Yeah, I'd probably lean Ayuk over Foreman. Patterson or Jacobs. You can't be benching Josh Jacobs. You just cannot do it, especially with all these injuries. I mean, Jacobs is just one of the few workhorse running backs in the league. Judy or Foreman? I would go Judy over Foreman for sure, Sam. I won a must-win game last week, and I faced Mixon. That's absolute money, Andrew. This week is another must-win. Pitts or Schultz. Yeah, I would. This one's super close. I mean, in my opinion, this one's extremely close. So this is like right at the line for me, and I've been a little bit too low on Dalton Schultz all season. I will own up to that. I was drafting him before the season, so I actually have him on a decent amount of teams. I actually did trade him away in one league a couple weeks ago, but then with the injury struggles, I was just pretty out on Dalton Schultz from the get-go this season. But he has looked pretty good since returning. He's seen 12 targets over his last 2 games. That's pretty solid for a tight end. He's had just about 50 yards in each of those last 2 games as well. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So I do think Schultz is startable over Kyle Pitts, especially with this rain. Again, I personally would be playing Pitts over Schultz. I think it's just extremely close, and I do think Schultz is safer. But I also have this irrational faith in Kyle Pitts. All right, Foreman or Rondale Moore. Yeah, I would go Rondale Moore over Foreman as well. I am a little bit nervous about the Kyler hamstring injury, but I feel like there's also a take that could actually help Rondale Moore, who's been playing finally primarily in the slot. DJ Moore is a must-start player tonight. Guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, you can see all my start-sit decisions at the bottom of the screen. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. I personally do think that the Falcons win this game. It's a pretty close spread. This game is in Carolina. Let me actually pull up the spread in this game. Because it's in Carolina, I do think the Falcons are just small favorites. Yeah, 2.5-point favorites in this game. I do think they can cover that spread. I could see the Panthers winning. I don't feel super strongly about the spread. I have been 52% against the spread this season. Start Pollard. That's not a Thursday night question, but yeah, we probably are starting Pollard. The weather. Yeah, so the weather is a big component of the game tonight. You got to be aware of the weather tonight. And it's a big, it does, I think it clarifies hopefully some of your start-sit decisions. Like if you were on the edge with Kyle Pitts, then this weather should be enough to push you over the edge and don't start Kyle Pitts. If you were on the edge with Drake London, then don't start Drake London. He's probably going to struggle a little bit more in the rain. I still think Drake London's an interesting dart throw tonight. I still really like Drake London rest of season at his current cost. I think he's one of the biggest sleepers in fantasy football right now. I know that the Falcons don't throw enough to really sustain relevance for Kyle Pitts and Drake London, but I also see a world where Desmond Ridder is the quarterback in the fantasy football playoffs, and Drake London has an amazing fantasy football playoff schedule. So I am buying low on Drake London, but yeah, he's not a must start tonight. I mean, the bottom line, he's not a must start. He's gone under 10 fantasy points in every single game since week 3. So I think he's a buy rest of season, but a sit in most spots tonight. But again, if you're down bad with the bye weeks or at the receiver position, I do think Drake London still has at least some upside against a really bad Panthers secondary. All right. Again, the weather tonight, what to expect. It's going to be raining the entire game. I don't think it's going to stop raining the entire game. The wind isn't supposed to be that bad. There was some early reports that it could be in that 25, 30 mile an hour range that we really get scared of from a fantasy football perspective, where they just can't throw at all, but it's not going to be that bad. I think it's going to be closer to the 15 mile an hour wind gusts. Again, still not great. Still could make throwing a little bit harder and lower the scoring in this game, but it's not enough to be like sit all the pass catchers in this game. We know also there can be times where people overreact to the weather, and we don't want to do that either, right? Because these guys are NFL players. They can play in the rain. They have played in the rain before. The Falcons are also a dome team, though, so they might struggle a little bit more than other teams. I generally think it is a good thing to account for, though, with the rain tonight, especially with these offenses. The app continues to clutch up for me, and I love it. Appreciate that, Lias. That's the WalterPicks app he's talking about. Make sure you guys have checked that out. Link is in the TikTok bio, in the YouTube description. If you haven't yet, it's going to help you with all your fantasy decisions. It's the best way you can support me. It's also completely free to download and try out. Davante Adams, 20 targets a game for the next couple of weeks. Crying face. Yeah, I'm starting Davante Adams in DFS probably this week. You probably should too. I mean, he's going to get peppered. Peppered with targets over the next couple of weeks with how everything went down last week, but also with the Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow injuries. I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy. And he might face a lot of double teams. Sometimes the double team thing can get a little overhyped in the fantasy football space, but I'm not going to worry too much about the double teams. I think Davante Adams is just going to be seeing an insane amount of targets. Terrace Marshall over Lockett or Sutton or Juju. No, definitely can't be forcing it with Terrace Marshall in a spot where you got Lockett, Sutton, and Juju. You don't need to put yourself through that, especially in a rain game. Terrace Marshall is like a sleeper play, like a very deep play. He's not by no means a lock. He's more of a fringe start in my eyes than a must start. Again, the only must starts in my mind tonight, Cordell Patterson. I really think his floor and ceiling are pretty solid in this game. The Falcons are going to run. The Falcons' strength on offense is just so clearly running the ball. They were going to go into this game against a Panthers defense that literally 5 days ago just allowed four rushing touchdowns to Joe Mixon. Let me pull up the actual numbers, because the numbers were just absolutely mind-boggling. He only had 22 carries. A normal amount of carries for Joe Mixon. 22 carries. That's definitely not his highest carry count of even the season. He rips off 153 yards and 4 TDs, and then he adds another 58 yards receiving and a TD there. You just got to love Cordell Patterson coming off that game. He's not going to have a Joe Mixon type game. Obviously, he's not going to score 5 touchdowns. Like, even 2 touchdowns is probably a little bit out of his range of outcomes. He's not going to score probably more than 2 TDs. Like, that's really his peak ceiling. But that's a pretty good ceiling for Cordero. And the floor is at least 50 yards, I think, in my opinion. At least he's getting you like 8 fantasy points. That's a pretty solid floor too. So I do like Cordell Patterson a lot tonight. I think he's good floor ceiling combo. DJ Moore is not a guy I'm willing to bench in most spots too. And again, I get the rain is a little scary, but he's just so obviously the most talented player on the Panthers. There's no one on the Panthers offense that even comes remotely close to the talent level of DJ Moore. And they're playing the Falcons secondary that have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to receivers. So it's like, you kind of have to start DJ Moore. I get that is a little scary. And then the last one that is definitely scary, and maybe is closer to a fringe start than these other 2 guys, is Kyle Pitts. And again, I'll read through the tight ends. I would definitely start over Kyle Pitts. I would start Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. I would start Zach Ertz, David Njoku. I would start. And I think Dalton Schultz is at the line. I don't think I would start Dalton Schultz over him, but it is close, and I wouldn't knock you for doing that. Then I'm starting Kyle Pitts. Those are the only guys I'm really starting over Kyle Pitts. So I think in most spots he is a start. He still is this elite freakish athlete at tight end that is for sure slept on at this stage in his career. But it's a rainy game, and the Falcons are going to be able to run the ball, I think, effectively. And when we've seen the Falcons be able to do that this season, they just don't throw, and there's just not enough volume at all to sustain any sort of upside or floor for any of their pass catchers. That's why Drake London is a fringe start, not a must start. Tonight, Drake London been under 10 fantasy points in every single game since week 3. Again, I still think he's a good buy low candidate for rest of season, because I think we see Desmond Ridder at some point this season. And I do really, really like Drake London's fantasy football playoff schedule. But in the rain tonight, we haven't seen We have not seen Marcus Mariota. We have not seen Marcus Mariota throw the ball more than 33 times this season. That was his peak, and that came in week 1. And since week 2, we haven't seen him even throw the ball 30 times in a single game. The interesting part about this game is the Falcons and Panthers just played each other literally 2 weeks ago in week 8. In that game, Marcus Mariota threw the ball 28 times, completed 71% of his passes, 253 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 43 rushing yards. He was QB6 that week. So Mariota definitely an interesting fringe start tonight against the Carolina Panthers, though I will say that game was in Atlanta, in the Dome, and now they're going to Carolina, and they're playing in the rain. So I don't think Marcus Mariota is going to throw quite as well as he did in that game. I do think it's interesting to call out, though, in that game as well. Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley, they combined over 100 yards. They had 30 total carries between the two of them. Again, just really like Cordell Patterson in this one. We also had Tyler Algier had 3 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. So combined, they had almost 150 total yards and a touchdown in this backfield just 2 weeks ago playing the Panthers. So again, that bodes very well for both Cordell Patterson and Tyler Algier. I think Caleb Huntley, though, is the third sort of odd guy out in this offense. I would not play Patterson over CD. See that comment in the YouTube live right now. I think I've had that one up for a while. All right. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. We're just getting started here. Got another 30 minutes or so in this live before we wrap up. Appreciate all of you. Seriously, appreciate you guys hitting the like button, the subscribe button. The best way to support me is checking out the WalterPicks app in the iOS and Android app store. I always have a lot of fun on these lives. Going to be breaking down as many comments as I can over the next 30 minutes, so definitely stick around. But again, just really appreciate your guys' support. It's going to be a fun game, guys. We got a rain game in Carolina. It's going to be raining the entire game. The wind, there's going to be gusts of wind up to 15 miles an hour. It is something to consider when making start-sit decisions in this game. Caden, why do I don't know what this question is. The question just does not make sense, Caden. Greg Dulcich or Kyle Pitts? Yeah, I'm going Pitts over Dulcich. I'm going Pitts over Dulcich personally, and I get that Greg Dulcich has been good in each of his 3 games, but I can't start Greg Dulcich. I can't start Greg Dulcich. I guess we'll call him Dulcich, even though it's Dulcich. We'll call him Dulcich. I kind of like Dulcich a little bit more. I'm not starting Greg Dulcich over Pitts. I can't do it. Greg Dulcich is a rookie. We know rookie tight ends really struggle. We know Kyle Pitts is a freak of nature. So I'm still starting Pitts over Dulcich. That might be bad process. I'm not going to lie. Dulcich has been good, but I personally am not starting him over Kyle Pitts. Start at tight end Pitts and Njoku, Everett, Fryer, Muth. Yeah, Tad, good to see you back in the live, man. I'm going Njoku here, but he is questionable, and I think that does muddy it up a tiny bit. I feel best about Njoku. Let me pull up the latest on Njoku, actually, because I think we got a report about him today. Did not practice on Thursday. It seems rather unlikely that he'll suit up back-to-back DNPs. So, yeah, I guess you got to take Njoku out of this question. And, yeah, it's Kyle Pitts, man. I think it's Kyle Pitts. It's between him and Muth. Tad, I got to be totally honest. I want nothing to do with Gerald Everett. And there's been a lot of people praising or liking Gerald Everett in these games without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and I just haven't really seen it from Gerald Everett. I think that his floor is really low. It feels like they're running a bunch of different tight ends too. Let me pull up the Gerald Everett stats and make sure I'm on the money with this, because it feels like he should have increased opportunity, right? There's no Mike Williams. There's no Keenan Allen yet. Last week, 36 yards. He does have 17 targets in his last 2 games. So honestly, that's more than I would have expected. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 4. He did play 67% of the snaps. That was his second most that he's played this season. So, yeah, that was also against the Falcons, though the Falcons have been really bad against tight ends this season. He does get a matchup this week. He gets the 49ers, who I believe are number 1. Let me pull this up really quickly. I believe they're number 1 against tight ends. So that certainly is not good. Let me pull this up really quickly. And, yeah, they're number 5 against tight ends this season. I would go Kyle Pitts, man. I'd go Kyle Pitts. It's a rainy game. It's risky. I'm going Kyle Pitts over all these guys. I'm betting on the talent. Kyle Pitts is absolutely the most talented tight end, by the way, on this list. You could not convince me otherwise. DraftKings. Yeah, so on DraftKings tonight, my favorite sleepers based on the pricing tonight, I would say you got to play Cordell Patterson. I think he will be popular, but I do like playing him. I think Kyle Pitts is a pretty good play at his price on DraftKings tonight, too. I also think Drake London is an interesting dart throw as well. I don't hate if you're in a huge tournament, rocking with some Desmond Ridder in case there's an injury. I think that's an interesting strategy sometimes in these showdown slates too. Sam, why do I bench Chuba Hubbard? Oh yeah, so Chuba Hubbard is a guy that I just have absolutely no faith in going into this game, and this one could easily end up coming back to me just because it's the Falcons defense, and Chuba Hubbard's probably going to play about 40% of the snaps. Like, he could easily see that much work. He played 48% of the snaps in his last game back in week 7. He had 9 carries. He did score a touchdown, 73 yards. That was against the Bucs, a much better run defense than the Falcons. I just think D'Onta Foreman is the guy to have in this backfield. I think D'Onta Foreman plays more than him. I think D'Onta Foreman's more likely to get the goal line carries. I think Chuba Hubbard's a little more likely to get the targets, but I'm just not feeling great about him playing behind D'Onta Foreman in this offense. I'm sort of out on Chuba Hubbard. Again, his last game was pretty good, 15.3 fantasy points, but in every single game before that, he was pretty irrelevant. Obviously, CMC was on the team for most of that, though, so a little bit tough to get a read on the Chuba Hubbard, D'Onta Foreman stuff, but coming off an injury, it's tough for me to have much faith in Chuba Hubbard. DK, Allen Lazard, D'Onta Foreman, got to go DK. Got to go DK Metcalf here. Scott Sampson in the YouTube live full PPR. Do I start Foreman or Pittman in my flex? My two wide receivers are Kirk and DJ. Nope. Nope. I would stick with Kirk and DJ. Honestly, I would stick with Kirk and DJ. Pittman's definitely a really tough one for me. I mean, it's so tough to trust Pittman, right? Like he's pretty clearly the top option on his team. He should see pretty good volume in what I don't think is necessarily a bad matchup this week. They're playing the Raiders, right? That's a very good matchup. It should be a very good matchup for Michael Pittman. But I mean, the way the Colts offense looked last week and just what's transpiring in the Colts organization. I mean, they are the most dysfunctional organization in the NFL right now. They are, I think, the worst team in the league right now. I think they are probably not going to win another game this season. And I'm a Pats fan. I watched every snap of that game and I go back and rewatch all the games. I mean, they have nothing on offense. I don't think Jeff Saturday is going to fix the offense. I do think that they probably will run even more too. So I'm pretty nervous for Michael Pittman. I'm not going to lie. I don't think he's a must start right now. Hey, Sam, Wandale or Curtis? Yeah, I would go Curtis over Wandale. I'm a little bit nervous for Wandale based off his last game, but will be interesting to see how he's used moving forward. I do think Wandale is going to be sort of a boom or bust option and not be as consistent as I was hoping he might be. So we start Foreman with Chuba Hubbard healthy now. He definitely, you don't need to. D'Onta Foreman is not a must start. He is a fringe start. D'Onta Foreman, not a must start. Why must start Kyle Pitts? So you're starting Kyle Pitts in most spots. Really, the take here is just because all the other tight ends are complete trash. That's the real reason you're going to start Kyle Pitts in most spots. Like if you have a tight end like Travis Kelce, like Dallas Goedert, like George Kittle, like TJ Hawkinson, like Zach Ertz, you're starting all those guys over Kyle Pitts. So he's not a must start in that sense. But those are really the only tight ends I think you can really argue you must start over Kyle Pitts. And then I think you kind of have to start Kyle Pitts. I still think he has an interesting ceiling against the Panthers. The Panthers haven't been good anywhere defensively this season. And we also know Kyle Pitts is one of the most athletic and talented tight ends in the league with the ball in his hands. And so even though he might not get very many touches, he has a really low floor. So did the rest of the tight ends that I didn't just name 20 seconds ago. So like, I still think he's just a better option than a lot of the other tight ends out there. There's like 5 or 6 tight ends I think you for sure should start over him though. But yeah, in week 8, literally 2 weeks ago, Kyle Pitts had 9 targets, 5 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown against the Panthers. He was the number 3 tight end in fantasy that week. It was his best week of the season. I mean, now he's playing the same defense. I mean, you'd assume they do a little bit different coverage against him. And again, it is raining tonight, so that does add a little bit of risk to Kyle Pitts. But I mean, he was the number 3 tight end 2 weeks ago against this exact same defense. I do think that playing Kyle Pitts is a pretty strong move tonight. Should I start Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, Ayuk? Or should I trade Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, Ayuk for Saquon and Amari? Yep, I would do this. I love getting Saquon right now. Rest of season, I think he is probably top 5 most valuable player in fantasy football right now, and you could argue he's in the top 2. Thanks for doing what you did. Do I trade Mixon away for Sutton and Jonathan Taylor? Got you, James. Yes, I would honestly do this. Mixon is a really interesting sell to me because of his fantasy football playoff schedule. He's been really inefficient this season, other than his literally 8th best game of all time, of all players, all time, basically. Last week, 5 TDs for Joe Mixon. Obviously, he's on a good offense. Obviously, he's going to benefit now from the Jamar Chase injury. I don't know if enough people were on that, honestly, with the Jamar Chase injury. But yeah, Mixon's going to be very involved in this offense. I still would much rather have Sutton and JT, though. I think Sutton's being slept on a little bit, too. And I also think there's a scenario where Jeff Saturday just unlocks JT again and gives him like 20-plus touches every single game as he tries to establish himself as a head coach in the NFL. Should I start Tyler Algier? I don't think he's a must start. No, I think he's an interesting fringe start, again, against this Panthers defense. The Falcons backfield, again, these 2 teams played each other literally 2 weeks ago. So that is also very interesting data to look at. And literally 2 weeks ago, when these 2 teams played each other, it was in much different environment. It was in the dome in Atlanta. Today, they're in the rain in Carolina. It's going to be raining the entire game. It's going to be gusts of wind up to 15 miles an hour. So definitely different game environments. But the Falcons, their backfield, which was at the time Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley, they combined over 150 total yards. They had 175-ish total yards and a touchdown. 30 carries combined between the two of them. 33 touches in total between the backfield for Atlanta. Now Cordero Patterson, the lead back for the Falcons. I just feel very good about him. And I still think Tyler Algier is an interesting play. I will say Caleb Huntley did better than Algier in that game. Huntley had 91 yards on the ground versus Algier's 39 yards, and they had similar amount of carries. But I still think Algier plays ahead of Huntley like he did last week, and I still think Algier is just better than Caleb Huntley. So I think Algier is a fringe start. Huntley's a must bench. Cordero Patterson's a must start for sure, though. DJ or Mooney, I would play DJ Moore over Mooney. You definitely gotta like DJ Moore. I mean, against this defense, even in the rain, I feel like DJ Moore, Cordero Patterson. I feel like are sort of must starts in most spots. We did get a question earlier in the live about Leonard Fournette versus Cordero Patterson. That's a really interesting one because Cordero Patterson is on the rise. I think Leonard Fournette's sort of on the downwards trend with Rachaad White getting more involved. I still feel like you got to play Fournette though over Cordero Patterson. So the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, they've been horrible in the secondary. They are again without AJ Terrell. They're by far their best piece in the secondary. And again, these teams just played each other. And the Panthers torched this Falcons secondary. PJ Walker went off against this Falcons secondary. 152 yard for DJ Moore plus a TD in that game. His first one of his first TDs, I think, of the season for DJ Moore. And then you also have Terrace Marshall ripping off 87 yards against the Falcons secondary. Even Laviska Shenault got in the action just 2 weeks ago against this defense, getting 5 catches, 26 yards. So I'm intrigued by DJ Moore in this game. Terrace Marshall definitely still a dart throw at wide receiver. But again, we got to temper expectations a little bit because of the rain and because of just these offenses in general with PJ Walker and Marcus Mariota. Both these teams do want to run the ball a decent amount. Who would you pick to get over 80.5 yards rushing and receiving? It has to be Cordero Patterson, in my opinion. It's him or DJ Moore, I think, between those two. But I like Patterson's rushing a lot tonight. Is Foreman popping off? I have moderate confidence in Foreman. Again, it's a good matchup against the Falcons defense, though their secondary is much worse than against the receivers than their run defense is against the running backs, but they haven't been great against running backs either. And Deontay Foreman did torch this team back just a couple weeks ago. He had 26 carries, 118 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that game. So you got to expect them to lean on Foreman a little bit tonight too. I do think Foreman is startable. He's startable. I don't think Chuba Hubbard is, though. I'm nervous about Chuba Hubbard coming off the injury. And I will mention too, back in week 8, when Foreman dominated this defense for 3 TDs and over 100 yards, Chuba Hubbard was out. So he definitely is much riskier this week with Chuba Hubbard back too. So I think both guys lower each other's floor and ceiling pretty considerably. Kenneth Walker or Cordero Patterson, got to go Kenneth Walker, man. You are not benching Kenneth Walker for the rest of the season. Khalil Herbert or Drake London, that one's pretty close. Let me pull up really quickly who the Bears are playing again this week. I do like Drake London more than the average person. So let me start off with that. I think Drake London's being pretty slept on just across the board. In fantasy, I think he's a really intriguing buy low rest of season. But this isn't necessarily the best spot for him. He did in that because of the rain. Really, that's why. It's a good matchup against a Panther secondary, who he did have one of his better games recently against. But yeah, last time they played, he had 5 targets, 31 yards. He did play 90% of the snaps, which I guess is a little encouraging. But yeah, the Bears, they get the Lions. So yeah, I think I would go Khalil Herbert. I would go Khalil Herbert over Drake London. Should I trade Ayuk, Najee, and Kittle for Lockett and Herbert? No, I definitely would not be doing that one. Olave or DJ Moore. Got it. Daddy Azeeks in the YouTube live. Got to go Olave. You got to go Olave. And there's no benching Olave really at this point too. And Olave does have a really, really, really good matchup this week as well. And again, DJ Moore playing in the rain. I would definitely lean Olave. How's the weather though tonight? The weather is not good. The weather is not good tonight. It's definitely something to be aware of tonight. You got to be aware of the weather when making your start sits tonight. It's going to be raining the entire game tonight. So it's definitely important to factor that into your start sits. And we do factor that in to the start sits in the WalterPicks app. They are factoring that in to the spread, into the player props, because it is going to impact the game. It's going to make it harder to throw. And we already know both these defenses aren't very good at stopping the run. And we know both these offenses, they like to run, especially when they can. It's clearly the Falcons' strength too. Their offensive line has been very impressive this season. So I do think that I do think the running attack has success tonight. I like Cordero Patterson a lot tonight. Okay, so really quickly, let me just run through. There's a 90% chance of rain basically throughout the entire game. It's going to rain basically the whole game. If not, it's going to be on and off. The wind is going to be like a steady like 10 to 15 miles an hour. When that happens, though, sometimes there could be gusts of wind above that. I'm not seeing anything like out there that's saying there's going to be gusts in like the 25, 30 mile an hour range, though. And that's where we get really concerned. And that's where we'd be like, definitely bench all of these guys. I'm just reading some of these reports right now, some different of these weather reports. And yeah, so it's going to be like 15-mile-an-hour winds and constant rain. So yeah, it will impact the passing game, but it's not like the worst case scenario with 25 plus mile an hour winds. Karina, should I start James Conner? Not a Thursday night question, and probably not. I mean, you should be looking elsewhere, I think, from James Conner. Let me actually pull up the James Conner stuff. Obviously, Benjamin, a must bench now. I know I was saying James Conner was a must bench last week, and I do think, let me pull it up before I victory lap here. I do think that was pretty good. Yeah, he only had 7 carries, 5 targets last week, 64 scoreless yards. He continued to look pretty inefficient. He has not scored more than 17 fantasy points in a game this season. He has not been a top 12 running back a single time this season. He has really not looked great this year. I don't think there's any way around it, though he did play an encouraging 72% of the snaps last week. So he is firmly ahead of Benjamin. He can be started. I don't really want to start, though. James Conner, is start JT or Patterson? Got to go JT. I do actually have some weird confidence in Jonathan Taylor this week. I know he's kind of a tough guy to trust. He hasn't been great this season. He's been injured, and he's coming off that injury just this game. I do sort of expect, though, and this is a little bit of an assumption here, that Jeff Saturday is going to run the ball a lot. I mean, he played on the line. He was a center, I believe, for the Colts back in the day. I mean, he played in the offensive line. I think he's going to bring that offensive line mentality. I think he's going to give the ball to the Colts' best player just repeatedly. And I think that's going to happen as soon as this week. So I think you kind of have to start Jonathan Taylor in all situations. And if you have JT, you definitely spent a lot to acquire him. Start Najee or not? No, we don't want to start Najee Harris either. And there's been all these whispers. I mean, so many whispers out there about him losing work to the backup in that offense, Jaylen Warren. I think there is some validity to those rumors. I think that's likely going to happen. I think there is fire where the smoke's coming from there with the Jaylen Warren stuff. Maybe that helps Najee be a little bit more efficient, but him losing volume is not going to be good. Do I trade Dalvin Cook? No, I would probably hold on to Dalvin Cook. Hey, Sam, Devontae Smith or Terrace Marshall? Got to go Devontae Smith over Terrace Marshall, in my opinion still. DJ Moore or Olave? Got to go Olave over DJ Moore. DJ Moore or Amon-Ra? You got to go Amon-Ra over DJ Moore. Explain. Okay, let me quickly explain what I got up on the TikTok live. It's the same thing that's going at the bottom of the YouTube live. So first of all, the must starts tonight. You got to start Cordell Patterson. This backfield, the Falcons backfield, ripped off over 170 total yards and a TD against the Panthers literally just 2 weeks ago. And then after that, we saw the Joe Mixon ripped off 150 yards and 5 touchdowns against this defense last week. And this is the defense that Cordell Patterson gets to play tonight on a short week in the rain. But Patterson only played 33% of the snaps last week. It was almost like the Falcons, and I really think this might have been the case, the Falcons looked ahead. They saw they had a short week in the week after that Cordell Patterson was returning from an injury. Cordell Patterson hadn't played since week 4. He came off IR last week. He played 38% of the snaps. It's almost like they were keeping him fresh for Thursday night football. And I think that's what we might see. I think we could see his snap share jump up to 50%, 60% in this game. And again, the Falcons really are much better team running the ball than throwing the ball. And we already saw it against this Panthers defense. They can really move the ball in the backfield against this Panthers defense. I think Patterson could easily go over 100 yards tonight. I like his prop a lot over 55.5 yards. And I also think he has a pretty good shot at a touchdown tonight. So yeah, I like Cordell Patterson. I think he's a must start in this game, especially in the rain. We just know the Falcons are going to run the ball. We know Cordell Patterson is going to be the primary runner of the ball. And it's a 3-way backfield, which is a little bit scary, but I still think in this matchup, CPAT got to be started. DJ Moore also ripped out 150 yards and a TD against this Falcons defense literally 2 weeks ago. I'm still starting him. I think he's a must start against this Falcons secondary. They don't have a player that can guard him with AJ Terrell and the injuries in that secondary. DJ Moore has seen at least 6 targets in every single game this season. So I really think he has a high floor, high ceiling. Kyle Pitts is a start in most spots because the other tight ends suck. Like I get that being anti-Kyle Pitts and man, you can't say Kyle Pitts is a must start. I get it. I get that he's been really bad, but also almost every tight end has been absolute trash this season. There's a decent amount of tight ends. There's at least 5 or 6 tight ends. I would start over Kyle Pitts. You're for sure starting Kelsey, Goddard, Kittle, Hawkinson. All those guys have to be starting Kyle Pitts. I mean, there's no real conversation there. I also think Zach Ertz, David Njoku, but Njoku's I don't even know if he's going to play. He hasn't practiced this week, so I wouldn't start him over Kyle Pitts. I would start Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts. I don't think I'd start Higbee with the Matt Stafford injury stuff. I'm nervous about Higbee with playing with John Wolford, I think, is backup for the Rams. I mean, it's going to be pretty ugly for the Rams. They're already ugly offense. I think Pat Freiermuth is definitely interesting over Kyle Pitts, but I still think I'd go Kyle Pitts over Muth. I think I'd go Kyle Pitts over Dulcich. I think I would go Kyle Pitts over Dalton Schultz. So I think that one's really close too, and I think you could play Dalton Schultz over Pitts. He's looked pretty good. But yeah, overall, I mean, I think Kyle Pitts is a must start in most spots because of the other tight ends being so terrible. I think Drake London's an interesting dart throw, but again, in the rain, a little bit more nervous about him. Just like the live, bro. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Should I start DJ Moore, Palmer, or Mooney? Hey, I would go DJ Moore. I would go DJ Moore over all these guys. I think DJ Moore has just as good of a floor, probably a better floor than the other two, and at least as good of a ceiling. My man, Sam, how we doing, tall? Do I start DJ Moore, Cordero Patterson, or Jeff Wilson? Yeah, I would go Cordero Patterson over DJ Moore and over Jeff Wilson. I really, again, we already saw the Falcons backfield in the running attack do really well against this Panthers defense. Tonight, they come into this game in the rain. Cordero Patterson should be well rested, only played 40% of the snaps last week, but was still their primary ball carrier in the backfield. I could see him going over 100 yards. I think he has a really high ceiling, and we know he's getting at least 10 carries in this game. He's going to be involved. He probably will get the goal line work. There's some risk to CPAT. Like he's certainly not a smash play. I think he's like the number 16 running back in my rankings this week, but I think his floor is good in this rain game. The big risk with him is just that it's a three-way backfield. We know Caleb Huntley will still be involved. Tyler Algier will get some run as well, and they are good in their own right. And if they pop off some big plays, all of a sudden CPAT sort of misses out on the touchdown opportunity. Lockett or Foreman at the flex. Yeah, I'd go Lockett over Foreman at the flex. Ertz or Pitts. Yeah, I'm playing Ertz over Pitts. Ertz is in that group of tight ends that I would start over Kyle Pitts. He's clearly has a better role in his offense than Kyle Pitts does. Zach Ertz is almost certainly going to get more targets than Kyle Pitts. So I do think he can be make my day and shout me out, please. Logan and Lucas Plays, man. Shout out to you. Thank you for joining the live. Aaron Jones or Cordero Patterson. Got to go Aaron Jones over Cordero Patterson. I do think Aaron Jones is back and playing this week. Pitts or Kmet. Yeah, I'm starting Pitts over Kmet. I get the Kmet sort of breakout game for Kmet, but is it really a breakout game when you've scored under 10 fantasy points in every other game this season? I mean, let's not trick ourselves into starting Cole Kmet. I don't think this week. Fournette or Foreman. Yeah, I would prefer Fournette over Foreman. Garoppolo or Mariota. That one's really interesting. Mariota played really well against the Panthers in their last game. He had 3 passing touchdowns back in week 8. Again, literally 2 weeks ago. But that game was also in Atlanta, in a dome, and this game's in the rain with the wind in Carolina. So Mariota's by no means a safe start. He's by no means a safe start in this game. Curtis Samuel or Drake London. Oh God, yeah, this one's close, man. If it wasn't raining, I honestly feel like I would be saying Drake London, but I feel like you got to go Curtis Samuel with the rain impact in this game and how low of a floor Drake London's already had. Again, I like Drake London more than most people. I think his target volume's been going a little under the radar, and I also think his playoff schedule for fantasy is going well under the radar. But yeah, Curtis Samuel is coming off a 17-point game. We haven't seen over 10 points from Drake London since week 3. So you kind of have to go Curtis Samuel. Montgomery or Foreman. I'm assuming this means David Montgomery. And yeah, I would probably go David Montgomery or Foreman as well. Sam, should I do Cordero Patterson and Terry McLaurin for Waddle? I'm giving Waddle away. Only if you're definitely starting both these guys. Waddle is definitely the best player in that trade. So tread cautiously, Caden. You got to be very cautious being the guy giving away the best player. But it does seem fair if those guys are both going to start for you. If Josh Allen is out for injury, yeah. So many injuries in flux. We got Josh Allen potentially out. This week we got Matt Stafford potentially out. I mean, these are landscape shifting injuries if they come to fruition. Should I start Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, or Mariota? I'd start Daniel Jones over all these guys. This week I am starting Daniel Jones in one league where I have Lamar Jackson. He gets the Texans this week, and the Texans have been sort of they've been, what's the word I'm looking for? Oddly good against quarterbacks this season. Deceivingly good. That's the word I'm looking for. They've been deceivingly good against quarterbacks this season because they've allowed the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks. The Texans have allowed the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks this season. But then when you really dig in to the numbers, you're not nearly as scared. And let me pull up those numbers right here. The Texans, they've actually allowed, they're actually bottom 15 in the league in yards allowed per game to quarterbacks. So they've allowed a lot of yards to quarterbacks. But the problem with the Texans is when teams get in the red zone against them, they know how bad the run defense is for the Texans, and they just run it straight down their throat, and they just score every single time. So they don't have to throw the ball into the end zone ever. But at some point, I think that will come around, and quarterbacks will start throwing touchdowns against the Texans. Daniel Jones also is a good rushing quarterback, and we know the Texans are the dead last run defense in the league. So I do like Daniel Jones over Marcus Mariota and over PJ Walker from the 2 guys playing tonight. Dulcich or Pitts, I didn't know it was raining. I still would go Pitts over Dulcich, even though I know it is raining. Again, it's a fair thing to bring up. Dulcich versus Pitts, I personally I can't side with the rookie tight end over the tight end I know is a generational talent, even if I know Dulcich is going to get maybe a few more targets than Pitts. I trust Pitts to do more with his targets than Dulcich. I know Dulcich has been over 10 points in all 3 of his games. Pitts has been pretty disappointing this season. Pitts also had his best game of the season, though, against the Panthers literally 2 weeks ago, where he was the number 3 tight end of that week. I'm playing Pitts over Dulcich. Hey, Sam, been a paid user of the app for a year now. Kaish, man, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Question, half PPR McLaurin or Palmer, must-win situation. Yeah, in a must-win situation, man, you got to go McLaurin. I think you got to go McLaurin. You got to trust your best players to go make plays when it really matters. Josh Palmer is definitely a very interesting play still with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams going to continue to be out. He looked great last week, but also the 49ers. This is a much tougher matchup for him this week. The 49ers have been a pretty solid defense. They've actually been they've been the 12th worst against the wide receiver position this season. So it certainly is a fair question. Yeah, but I personally be going McLaurin. Let me pull up McLaurin's matchup just really quickly though, before I finalize that answer. Let's see here. Yeah, they're playing the Eagles. The Eagles have been better against receivers than the 49ers have been. Yeah, I still think I'd go McLaurin though with how he's been used recently. Jacobs for Waddle PPR. I have good receivers and need an RB2. App says it's close, but yes. Yeah, so if you're getting Jacobs and you're giving Waddle and you need an RB2, then Matt, you got to do this trade, man. You got to do it. And it's tough to give up Waddle. I think he's the number 5 receiver in fantasy right now. I think Tyreek's number 1 and he's number 5 and something ridiculous like that. I mean, both guys have just been so good. I was so many targets just schemed towards Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle this season. Yet Jalen Waddle ranks number 9 in fantasy points per game. I think he might be 5th though in total points this season. But I like this trade. I think Jacobs is a good buy candidate right now. He is going to be used a ton with this Waller and Renfro news. He's already being used a ton, and he also has a pretty good schedule down the stretch. So I do like Josh Jacobs. Pitts or Ingram? I'm playing Pitts over Ingram, especially with his back injury for Ingram. We've seen the injury bug with Ingram throughout his career. I'm pretty nervous for Evan Ingram rest of season at this point. I smashed the like button. Thank you, man. I do appreciate that. Do you think Josh Allen will play? Yeah, so good question, man. Let me talk about the Josh Allen stuff. Again, the Josh Allen stuff, the Matthew Stafford stuff. I mean, these are landscape shifting fantasy football injuries that really, affect a lot of players. I'm very nervous for Tyler Higbee, Allen Robinson, even more so this week with the Matt Stafford injury. You got to be pretty scared for Cooper Kupp also with John Wolford maybe starting for the Rams. And then Josh Allen. Josh Allen to Case Keenum. I don't think Josh Allen's playing this week. Let me start with the short answer. I don't think he's playing this week. I've been saying from the very, very inception of this injury, and we haven't really had too much clarity into whether or not he'll play. So like everyone's sort of guessing right now that I feel like the Bills are going to be able to talk themselves into, yeah, we could win some of these games with Case Keenum. We don't know for sure, obviously, but we could win these games. They're going to talk themselves into, let's do the safe thing with Josh Allen, the future of the franchise, because we still could win these games. And I could see the flip side argument of that. The division is close. Maybe they don't think they have as good of a chance to win the division with Case Keenum. But I kind of see themselves talking themselves into that and giving Josh Allen a few weeks to get back to close to 100%. I'm all here for the Case Keenum, Stephon Diggs revenge game against the Vikings. I think that could be kind of exciting. And I think that I don't, though, overall have very much faith in Case Keenum. But yeah, I think Josh Allen won't play this week, but I'm fully speculating, and it feels like there's close to a 50-50 chance at this point. Sanders or Patterson? That one's really, really close as well. I personally feel like I like Patterson a little bit more. Let me pull up the rankings here. And yeah, I have Patterson 2 spots ahead of Miles Sanders. I would start Cordell Patterson ahead of Miles Sanders. I need this. DJ Moore or Lockett. I got you, man. This one's definitely close. Also, again, DJ Moore torched the Falcons secondary. Literally 2 weeks ago, he torched the Falcons secondary. He had a fantastic game. Let me pull up the actual numbers again in that game, but I believe he went over 100 yards and scored a touchdown. And yep, he had 152 yards and a touchdown on 11 targets, 6 catches. He was the number 5 receiver back in week 8 against the Falcons. So it's a little bit scary to be benching DJ Moore in this game, but there's also rain in this game, and that should be taken into account. I still would play DJ Moore over Tyler Lockett, though. Yeah, I would be going DJ Moore over Lockett. He definitely has a little bit more risk than usual because of the rain, but this Falcons secondary is just not one to fade. And even in the rain, DJ Moore is just he's so by far the most talented player in his own team. It's like there's very rare times this happens in the NFL where there's just one player that is so clearly more talented than the entire rest of the team. And that is the case with DJ Moore. DJ Moore or Juju, I would probably lean DJ Moore in this one too. Let me pull up the rankings here really quickly. And yeah, I would go DJ Moore over Juju Smith-Schuster as well. As good as Juju's been. Again, I still really like the matchup for DJ Moore. I got him on Ron Patterson for D-Hop. Good Trade, yeah, I love that trade, man. I absolutely love that trade because I'm high on D-Hop, and I get being really high on D-Hop. He's been insanely targeted in his first few games, and I don't think that's going to change. But I also am really high on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I think we even have Amon-Ra St. Brown projected higher than DeAndre Hopkins this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown with no T.J. Hawkinson, I'm trying to buy Amon-Ra in literally every single league I possibly can. He saw 9 targets last week. He didn't have a big game, but he still saw a healthy 9 targets. No Hawkinson on the field. Huge for him. So yeah, I really like Amon-Ra. I think there's a good case for him being better than Hopkins rest of the season. Do I play Patterson over Dameon Pierce? Love the work you're doing. Thanks, Ethan. Really appreciate that. I appreciate the positivity, honestly, from all of you. There's a lot of negativity, man. A lot of negativity out there. I like to try to focus on the positive, and I do appreciate the positive, both negativity and positivity. Very contagious. So thank you for the positivity, Ethan. I do appreciate that. Let me look at the Dameon Pierce projection. It's tough to bench Dameon Pierce. Like my gut says no. Yeah, don't bench Dameon Pierce. And yeah, I'm right there. You can't bench Dameon Pierce. You can't bench Dameon Pierce for Cordero Patterson just purely based on volume. Like regardless of matchup, as good as the matchup is for Patterson, and I don't think Dameon Pierce has like the best matchup this week. Let me actually pull it up really quickly. But we know if as long as Dameon Pierce doesn't get hurt, he's seeing the ball at least 20 times. And there's just not that many guys in the NFL you can say that about this season. And yeah, it's a good matchup against the Giants. The Giants have allowed the 20th, they rank 20th. So they're 12th worst in the NFL at stopping running backs this season. They've allowed the 12th most yards per game to running backs this season. That's who Dameon Pierce is up against. Patterson has a better matchup, but we can't confidently say Patterson's going to get 20 plus touches. I'd actually be pretty surprised if Patterson went for 20 plus touches, and I'd be surprised if Dameon Pierce didn't. So it's sort of, you're comparing apples and oranges. I really think Dameon Pierce is in a higher tier than Cordero Patterson this week, and pretty much every week moving forward. DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Foreman, or Najee Harris. I'd go DJ Moore over Ayuka, the bazooka. Najee Harris, man. I mean, how down bad is Najee Harris? He's one of the few guys, it feels like every year there's a few of these guys where you just can't blame injury. Like you can't blame injury for him busting this season. He hasn't been hurt. He's been fully healthy. He did obviously deal with that Liz Frank injury. I think that was the offseason or maybe the end of last season. He's seeing considerable volume. He has only 3 touchdowns this season. He's averaging 10.9 fantasy points per game. And now there's all this smoke, all these rumors, the chatter. I don't know if you guys hear it too. I'm certainly seeing it in a few different places that Jaylen Warren is going to be more involved. And I'll believe that when I see it. But I mean, just the fact that is even something that's being murmured out there is a horrible sign for Najee Harris, who's been incredibly volume dependent in fantasy since he's entered the league. So yeah, I think honestly, Deontay Foreman over Najee Harris, it might be the trigger that you just have to pull. A Foreman or Jones, I would definitely go Aaron Jones over Foreman. I would play Zach Ertz over Kyle Pitts. Again, I still think Kyle Pitts is startable tonight. I do think he's startable. I would play him over Njoku. I don't think Njoku is going to play this week. He hasn't practiced this week. I would play Kyle Pitts over Pat Freiermuth. I would play him over Gerald Everett. I would play him over Greg Dulcich. I personally would play him over Dalton Schultz, but that one's definitely a little close. I wouldn't play him over TJ Hawkinson. I wouldn't play him over George Kittle. I wouldn't play him over Dallas Goedert or Travis Kelce. But I would play him over Njoku. I would play him over Higbee too. With John, again, I'm not even sure Matt Stafford's going to play. He's in the concussion protocol right now. He hasn't practiced this week either. So yeah, I think Pitts is a start just because he's better than a lot of these other horrible options at tight end. But yeah, I'm not starting any of these other elite options over him. Hey, Sam, pick one to bench, full PPR, 5-point, 100-yard bonus. Juju, DK, Lockett, Cooper. Pick one to bench. Yeah, you bench. I kind of feel like you kind of have to bench Juju here. As good as Juju's been, I like playing both DK and Lockett because at least one of these guys is probably going to pop off any given week. And the target concentration is just so concentrated around them. Let me pull up the Seahawks here projections. But yeah, the Seahawks, they're up against the Bucs this week. Bucs have been pretty good against receivers this season. I still like Lockett and Metcalf this week, though. And then Amari Cooper, he gets a pretty solid matchup this week, too, I believe. He's up against, the Dolphins. They've been bottom 10 in the league against receivers this year. So you can't bench any of those guys. I think you got to bench Juju. Juju, Debo, or DJ Moore, pick 2. Got Kupp locked. Yeah, obviously you're locking Kupp. Obviously you kind of have to lock Debo too, assuming that he plays, obviously. But I am playing DJ Moore over Juju. I am playing DJ Moore over Juju Smith-Schuster. It is a good matchup for Juju too this week, though. I will admit the Jaguars haven't been great really against anything this season. They've been about middle of the pack though against receivers. I just feel generally better about DJ Moore against the Falcons than I do about Juju against the Jaguars. Oh, I'm seeing one of our TikTok subscribers in the TikTok chat. Let me make sure I get to that question. Thank you for subscribing, by the way. DJ Moore, Pollard, please, I need to stay in the playoffs. Yeah, that one's really tough, right? The Pollard stuff is really tough because it's so tough to get a read on the Zeke situation. My read on the Zeke situation is he's playing this week and he's going to get close to half of the touches in the backfield, or at least half the snaps. We know Pollard, it sounds like he's going to be capped at around 30 snaps. He can obviously do a lot, though, with those 30 snaps. So I don't think that makes him a must bench by any means. He still projects really well against the Packers. The Packers have been horrible. I mean, horrible against the run this season. They ranked third worst in the NFL in yards allowed per game to running backs. Now you get Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard averaging 6.2 yards per carry. I mean, that is just incredible. And Tony Pollard clearly more talented and more efficient than Zeke. Right now, he's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. That ranks seventh best in the NFL. He's third best in the NFL in yards per touch. I would be going Tony Pollard over DJ Moore, and I honestly think the tiebreaker can be the rain in this game. And Tony Pollard certainly feels like he has a safer floor than DJ Moore. Again, I do like DJ Moore a lot tonight, though. W Streamer, thanks, man. Start 2, Jamal Williams, Deontay Foreman, Aaron Jones, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore. Yeah, I'd probably be benching these first two guys, and that's probably how you drafted too. But yeah, I'd probably bench Jamal Williams, Deontay Foreman, both guys sort of in committees in slightly sketchy offenses. Aaron Jones, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, I have a lot more faith in. Jamal Williams is been really good, obviously, but it's only a matter of time until they have enough confidence in Swift's health to start increasing his workload, and that's going to be bad news for Jamal Williams. What about Josh Palmer? Yeah, Josh Palmer has been great, man. Walter, for my flex, who do I put? Debo, Pollard, Williams, Foreman, Wando, Robinson, or Hardman? First of all, classic mistake, man. Don't worry about it. My name's actually Sam. Walter is the AI algorithm I helped build that powers the WalterPicks app, which you can find for free in the iOS and Android app store. A classic mistake. Don't worry about it. But again, my name is Sam, one of the creators of WalterPicks. Debo, Pollard, Williams, Foreman, Wando, Hardman. You got to go Debo. You got to go Debo. I mean, Debo's on his own tier among all those guys. Again, I don't know for sure he's playing this week. I know he was dealing with injuries. Let me pull up the Debo Samuel stuff, but I'm assuming he's playing for the sake of these questions. Yeah, he's a full participant in practice. You got to start Debo Samuel. Should I start Cole Kmet? No. Karina, don't talk yourself into Cole Kmet. Do not do it. I really think that's a dangerous path to go down with Cole Kmet. Thoughts on Olave or Lockett this week? You got to really like Olave this week. And Olave's shown he has one of the safest floors in fantasy, and we know his ceiling is there too because he leads. He's top 5 in the NFL in air yards. I don't think he leads the NFL in air yards anymore, but he's top 5. We have him as a top 15 wide receiver this week, and he has a good matchup against the Steelers. The Steelers have allowed the most yards per game to receivers in the NFL this season. So you got to start Olave. Olave is a must start for sure this week. Pickens or Marshall Jr. Yeah, I would personally go Pickens over Terrace Marshall, especially given the rain in this game. Again, it's going to be raining a lot in this game. All right, guys, I have 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. So I'm going to get to as many comments as I can. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, though. We are always live Thursday nights, always live Sunday mornings. I'm posting daily content on TikTok, so make sure you're hitting the follow button there. Posting weekly content on YouTube as well, so make sure you're hitting the subscribe button on YouTube. Walker or Olave or CeeDee Lamb. You got to start all three of these guys, but I would go Walker over all of them. I generally like in season long siding with the running backs over receivers too. They just have a safer floor because of the way they get their touches. Do I put Patterson over D-Hop at flex this week because of the matchup? Nope. You can't be benching D-Hop for Patterson. As much as I like Patterson tonight, you're not benching D-Hop, especially if that's a PPR league. Swift and Dylan for Lockett and Judy half PPR. I would prefer the Lockett and Judy side right now. It's a fair trade, I guess. Like Swift definitely has the most potential of those four guys, but right now I think the Lockett Judy side is pretty clearly the better side there. Mariota or Allen? We just don't know if Josh Allen's playing. I don't love Mariota tonight though, so I would probably hold out hope for Allen. Then should I start Fant? Yeah, I do think I like Noah Fant more than Cole Kmet. I do think so. It's close. I mean, both guys are super sketchy, but that's just what it is. The tight end position. You're not going to find anyone that I have confidence in that are in that guy's tier. Like all those tight ends, every tight end basically from like Hobbits down, like 0 points is well within the range of outcomes every single week. Aaron Jones or Tony Pollard. I'd go Aaron Jones over Tony Pollard. Dolchich or Taysom. I'd probably go Dolch over Taysom. Taysom was barely involved last game. I hope they changed that, but that was pretty tough to see. If you are a Taysom fan, you did see the weather, right? Yes, I did see the weather. It's going to be raining in this game, the whole game. There's some wind too. I'm not super concerned about the wind. It's only 10 to 15 miles an hour is sort of what I saw. That means there could be gusts above that, and that is a little bit concerning, especially on top of the rain. So yeah, I think you downgrade both passing attacks in this game. That's why DJ Moore and Kyle Pitts, they're the only pass catchers I think are must starts in this game. If it wasn't raining, I probably would have been more bullish on Drake London on this live stream. But I'm nervous about the rain for him too. But you also can't ignore that this is still a bad secondaries in this game. Good matchup for both offenses against these defenses. The defenses in this game are not good. The defenses are not good. The Falcons have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers this season. They have allowed the 12th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. They've given up the 6th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, the 6th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. I mean, the Falcons defense, guys, is really, really bad, and they're missing their best players. The tight ends have done not so good against Carolina, but Kyle Pitts had his best game against the Panthers just 2 weeks ago. He had 80 yards and a touchdown. He finished with 19 points, was the number 3 tight end that week. That's why I still think Kyle Pitts is worth starting over a lot of these other dusty tight ends. We also know that the Panthers are atrocious against the run. They just allowed a 5-touchdown, 150-yard, 200-yard day. It was a 200-plus yard day for Joe Mixon last week on only 26 touches. Like a normal workload for Joe Mixon, he pops off for 200 yards and 5 TDs against this Panthers defense. You got to feel good about Cordell Patterson tonight for that exact reason. And I bet Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley will have some big runs too. When the Falcons played this team literally 2 weeks ago, they had a total of over 150 yards combined in their backfield. And the Panthers are also really bad against receivers. They've allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to receivers. The quarterbacks have also been pretty average against the Panthers, partially because the run defense has been so bad. No huge games, no horrible games against the Panthers from the quarterback perspective. I don't love Mariota's ceiling in this game, especially in the rain. So as much as you should factor in the rain, we can't just ignore that these defenses are also really bad. So I think that you got to factor it in. You got to downgrade, I think, Drake London, Terrace Marshall, a decent amount. DJ Moore, Kyle Pitts, I think their floors are definitely lowered, but I still think their ceilings are pretty high in this matchup. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Guys, time is the most valuable thing we have. So thank you for spending some time with me today. I'll be back live Sunday morning. Already looking forward to it. Good luck tonight. Enjoy the game. I'll be back very soon. Have a good one, guys.